right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Essential Essence to 20. Join me as we look at the features, focuses, powers, and perks of the Essence to 20 system to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are finally going to be finishing off the focuses of the Analyst. Apologies for this taking so long. It has been interesting, to say the least. Oh, man. My life is never boring. So, yes, we are going to be looking at the Spec Ops focus for the Analyst. Quick reminder, if you do enjoy this stuff, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super important. Now, let's talk about Spec Ops. So, we've already covered the Analyst in and of itself being, like the core class, excuse me for a moment. Wow, it is really dry right now. So, the Analyst core class is very much a support class, to the point where I mentioned quite a few times in the original Analyst Essential Essence to 20 that if you want to be the person that's getting the killing blows and stuff like that, Analyst is probably not going to be your class. It is a support-based class. It is highly effective in the realm of a team, but on its own it can feel very lackluster because so many of the abilities really kind of help tee up your allies to get the winning goal, but it's not particularly great at your character personally getting the good stuff. Well, Spec Ops changes that slightly. Now, there's not a ton that you can do with how much the Analyst focuses on support, just in base class. You cannot change the Analyst into a hyper DPS role. Like, you're not going to be the Pink Ranger with the Analyst, no matter the focus. But the Spec Ops focus does have a much more aggressive, offensive focus. And it allows you to still be a supporter of your team, but to also support your team by kind of dishing out a decent amount of damage and killing off enemies as a way to support your team. So, the Spec Ops for Transformer focuses in general, or foci as they call them, both technically or grammatically correct. I found that out from a friend of mine who's an author. It just depends because the root word has both, I think it's like Greek and Latin roots. And so focuses is one of those and foci is the other. I think foci is the Latin version of the plural and focuses is the Greek version or vice versa, something like that. Anyway, the thing with focuses for the Transformers RPG is you get one of your essence score increases from it. However, it's not a big difference from the manipulator because you still get a social essence score increase. And the skills that you can increase because of that essence score increase are the same. So that doesn't really change. But the first thing it does change is your first ability at level 1. You get Unassuming. So Unassuming, you basically just get an upshift on deception and infiltration skill tests. And you're qualified with all one-handed limited weaponry. So this are limited weapons. So this in and of itself massively changes how the Analyst plays. The reason being is there's a difference between being trained and being qualified. Being trained in weapons means you can use them. Being qualified in them means that you don't have to make a requisition roll in order to get that. You can just take it. And the interesting thing about the Essence20 system and the equipment upgrade system in general is if you want to add an upgrade to a weapon, there's this little table that you can look on that I'm actually going to go to real quick here so I don't say the wrong things. Come on, load. You can do it. Where is my upgrade? There's the upgrade table. So, the thing with qualifications, again, if you're qualified in equipment, it means that you can just use it. You can just requisition it. You don't have to use any of requisition rolls. That also means you can just get your qualified equipment and then use your requisition rolls to upgrade it. And with the upgrading table, the interesting thing about it is if you take a standard weapon and you put a limited upgrade on it, it counts as a limited weapon. The same thing if you take a limited weapon and put a standard upgrade on it, it also counts as a limited weapon. So because it specifically says you are qualified in limited, and I'm going to read it here before I say the wrong thing. You're qualified with all one-handed limited weapons. So any limited weapon that you can use with one hand, you are qualified in. And so when you look at the various upgrades that you can apply because of that, basically for standard weapons with a limited upgrade, one-handed standard weapons are close combat blade, close combat bludgeon, blaster, and then the various grenades. For limited weapons, close combat heavy blade and the close combat heavy bludgeon are technically one or two-handed, and it doesn't say anything in there being exclusively one-handed. It can't be, like, they don't have a what's it called, versatile term in the Essence20, but that's basically what those two things are. So technically those would work. The short blade would work. The medium blade would work. Short bludgeon, thrown blades, small thrown weapon, large thrown weapon, and that's really, and then more grenades. And that's really all you get away with as far as just standard things without any upgrades. So any of the standard weapons, you would have to add a limited upgrade to them in order for them to count as limited. So what are limited weapon upgrades? Well, all of the elemental melee traits. So if you wanted to add fire traits, cold trait, anything like that, all of those for melee weapons are all limited weapon upgrades. So you could take any of these standard limited weapons, add an element to them, and now you have a now you have a limited weapon that gives you access to any energy the thing you want. Now that's exclusively melee weapons. For ranged weapons, you can do things like deadly. You can give explosive rounds. Trying to think of other things like that. And the other thing that's kind of fun is microtech weaponry is a limited upgrade. So you can take any standard two-handed weapon, put the microtech weapon upgrade on it, and it becomes one-handed. So those things in and of itself add a lot of versatility to the focus, because again, each one of those things are going to allow you to play a little bit differently. Using fire type or cold type damage just doesn't mean that, well, if they are weak to the fire type, then they take extra damage. Each one of the different energy types has an alternate form of attack that's attached to that energy type. And so by having like an electro blade and a cold blade or a sonic blade with you, it allows your character to really be able to mess around with how you want to deal damage in that. So yeah, the upshift on deception and infiltration tests are nice, don't get me wrong, but the fact that you're qualified with all one-handed limited weapons is really, really useful. And then again, if you take a one-handed limited weapon and then add an upgrade to it, again, you can start at limited weapon and then start upgrading from there when you're doing your requisition rolls. So in addition to just giving you access to a bunch of different weapons and upgrades without having to roll, it also means that if you do want to roll, you're going to start one level up. You're going to start with a limited weapon and then start adding stuff on to it for your upgrades. If you wanted to do multiple upgrades on a single weapon, things like that. So yeah, overall, it is a rather unassuming ability because it looks really, really simple. But when you realize what you can do with upgrades and weapons in this, it's actually a really, really useful skill. And again, it definitely leads the Spec Ops into the more offense-oriented role that the manipulator just isn't designed for. So, moving on. At 3rd level, you get target vulnerability. So this one starts to get really interesting. At 3rd level, when you make an attack with a one-handed weapon, and that's something that you're going to see just constantly with the Spec Ops, is you're going to be using one-handed weapons for everything. It requires you to use one-handed weapons. But again, with something like that microtap weapon, one of my favorite things to do, if you go back to my designing New Dragons series where I did the Transformers RPG, one of the things I did is I actually took the element sprayer, I think is what it is. It's basically a flamethrower that you can put different elements in, and I put a microtech upgrade on it to basically create energy-based handguns to give my gunslinger the ability to kind of pick and choose what kind of damage and what kind of additional effects it wanted to have with a bunch of different pistols, because the gunslinger gets a bunch of different extra weapons it can carry. Yeah, just as just the fact that you have to use one-handed weapons is not nearly as big a deal as it sounds. There's lots of ways to make really interesting one-handed weapons in this game. So when you attack with a one-handed weapon, you can also attempt an alertness skill test against the target's willpower or cleverness. On a success, your attack deals extra damage. How much damage? This is what I do in every single one of these things. I never want people to be able to use one of my videos to avoid buying the books. I like Renegade. I think they're great. I've had some interactions with the people over there. They've always been nothing but pleasant to me. If you want to know the specifics, I will intentionally leave out certain details just to say, go and buy the book. They're not super expensive anymore. There's been a bunch of different bundles now that you're able to get a lot of these books for cheaper than normal. So pick them up. So anyway, this effectively, anytime you attack with a one-handed weapon, you can attempt an alertness skill test against either the target's willpower or cleverness. And on a success, you get to do extra damage, which is really, really nice. And again, it leans into that more offense-oriented role. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting is it does actually interact with some core analyst abilities, specifically the Analyze Target. Analyze Target uses standard action to make an alertness skill test, so you're still using alertness or not, against willpower or cleverness. And on a success, you can learn a valuable piece of information, such as their rank in a specific skill or a defense score. So when you're using Analyze to target, which you would be using a lot because that's how the Analyst works, is that Analyze Target is a core skill or a table It's a table feature, so it's something you're going to be doing constantly. One of the things you're going to want to focus on is figuring out whether their willpower or cleverness is higher, because due to the fact that you get to choose which one of those you attack, you're going to want to focus on the one that is the lowest, and the more often you make that attack, the more damage you're going to be doing. So, yeah, again, this is your first kind of big push into the Spec Ops role is designed to be much more offense oriented. Yeah, Unassuming gave you a bunch more weapons which you can use in various things. This is literally kind of pointing you to, oh, also we want you to kill things. So, yeah, moving on. At 6th level, you get Whisper Campaign. This is such an interesting ability. Not really from like a mechanics standpoint, because it's relatively simple from a mechanics standpoint. But from a role-playing standpoint, this is either the biggest dick move in the world or like 4D chess. So, the way it works, you attempt a social-based skill test, designate an adjacent creature. Now, notice here it says designate an adjacent creature. It doesn't say designate an ally, doesn't say designate an enemy, designate an adjacent creature. It doesn't even say designate a humanoid or something like that. Just adjacent creature. It could be a lizard next to you. If you fail the skill test and there are negative consequences for failure, such as loss of trust, you can try to have the consequences affect the designated creature instead. If the creature resists, roll a contested skill test between your deception and their persuasion. You get an edge on this roll. Guys, this is literally going up and going, oh yeah, no, I know the owner. So you have to give me a discount on this. And the person goes, no, you don't. I'm the owner. And you turn to the lizard sitting next to you and go, Mr. Fluffles, you said you know the owner. I can't believe this guy. I can't take him anywhere. And you are convincing that person that this is Mr. Fluffles. So in that aspect, like Mr. Fluffles is a Karen. In that aspect, it can be fairly interesting and weird. However, and there can be a lot of different ways when you're just amongst allies for that to be useful. At the exact same time, this can be incredibly useful in dividing and conquering an enemy team. What I mean by that is, if you read the Decepticon Directive, the Decepticons in general are not so much a team as much as they are a bunch of people working together because they have similar goals. But because they're not really a quote-unquote team, infighting is really, really common with the Decepticons. And you see that in in Beast Wars, you see it constantly where you will have like Tarantulas plays everybody. Pterosaur is constantly trying to kind of usurp Megatron, whereas you have Waspinator and Scorponok are hyper loyal to Megatron for a while. And then Waspinator just gets blown up over and over and over again, and he starts losing his loyalty to just about everyone because he always ends up as a pile of scrap. So this can be just as useful in a situation where you're dealing with the enemy, whether it's in the middle of combat, whether you're trying to negotiate with them before combat starts. Telling a lie and having it fail and then being able to shift the blame to an enemy instead of you is massively useful. Which, when we get to the next ability, you can discover why this can be as useful as it is. Because sowing discord amongst your enemies can be an exceptionally effective tactic for giving your team an advantage. Because bare minimum, you're going to sow enough discord that there's going to be mistrust with them, meaning that they're not going to be able to command them as effectively because they're always worried about getting backstabbed and stuff like that. In the best case scenario, you can literally divide the enemies that you're dealing with. Well, now both the Decepticons and the person that you just singled out are now two different teams. And Decepticons kind of by definition tend to be opportunists. So this could be a very, very easy way to get a turncoat and to flip a more kind of weak-willed Decepticon on the Decepticons to get information for your team, or bare minimum just to cause some chaos in their ranks. So yeah, like I said, it's probably one of the more unique abilities that I've seen in a tabletop RPG at all. The ability to basically lie, and if you're called out, blame it on someone else effectively, is not an ability I've ever seen before. And there's so many different ways that you could use this. Again, most people will think about it as, you know, being able to kind of throw their friends under the bus so that they don't burn the bridge with the merchant that they're dealing with. But there's so many other ways that you can use this intentionally. Like you can always intentionally fail a test. And so you could intentionally use this ability to plant distrust into two people that you don't want trusting each other. So again, there's just so many different ways that you can use this, and it's such an interesting, unique skill that I love everything about it. So, yeah, moving on. At 10th level, you get Exploit Trust. 10th level, when you attack a surprised character, or if you attack a target outside of combat, you get an edge on the attack and deal some additional damage. How much damage? Go pick up the book. If you've used target vulnerability on your target, this additional damage stacks. So, this is another thing where now you are adding just more damage onto more damage. This one is a little bit more difficult because either you have to attack a surprised character, which the surprise status in and of itself is basically only lasts for the first round of combat, or attacking a target outside of combat. So this is really good for like starting combat and ambushes. But when we go back to the Whisper campaign, this could be one of the easiest ways to set up an ambush, is to kind of walk for it. You see the enemies, they're getting ready, you know, Megatron is sitting there going, yes, yes, now it is time for us to destroy the Maximals. And Rat Trap just wanders out and goes, hey, Laserface, what say we don't go into a fight and I just kind of join your team? And why would you think I would want that? Yes. Well, that's what Pterosaur told me. Pterosaur said that he's running this joint now and that you're just a big doo-doo head. Really? And so after this, and by the way, I'm very proud that those sound almost kind of somewhat similar to the Beast Wars characters. I didn't watch that show ad nauseum when I was a child at all. So you do something like this. You know that an ambush is happening. You can see that things are going to happen. You go forward, use Whisper Campaign to get them to start arguing amongst themselves, and then just go, woohoo, kapow. And now you get to use Exploit to trust. Again, when you start kind of combining abilities, you definitely get more interesting, unique things. And again, there's so many different ways to use Whisper Campaign that as soon as I read it and then I read Exploit Trust, I'm like, this could be absolutely perfect. Like you see the Decepticons or the Predacons, you know, once we get the Techno-Organic Secrets book out, you see them doing something, you just send your Spec Ops dude out there and they just lie a bit, and as soon as they're caught in the lie, they blame it on someone else, get some infighting going, and then instantly pull out a weapon and pow! and you're golden. Like, there's just so many different ways to use it. I love it. Again, relatively simple ability with rather complex ways to enact it. So, yeah, moving on. At 17th level, you get Opportunist. When you successfully attack a stunned target, you extend the stun effect by 1 round. Effectively, Opportunist means that every weapon, every attack that you do has the added effect of having stun 1 on it if the target is already stunned. That also means if you use a weapon that already has stun on it, Opportunist is going to extend the stun effect by 1 round and then stun your stun effect, whatever weapon you're using that has stun 1 or stun 2, is going to add on to that because stun effects stack. And if you can get the stun effect to equal their hit points, then, and it's current hit points, not max hit points. So if you can get the stun effect to equal their hit points, then you just knock them out. So if you combine that with exploit trust and target vulnerability, you can use those to get increased damage to reduce it down. And then in addition to that, you can increase the stun effect as long as either someone else has stunned them or you stunned them previously on the last round or something like that. Playing around with like initiative order and stuff like that can help you to even more take advantage of like surprise opportunities and stuff like that. So yeah, is it the most powerful ability in the world? Not really. Compared to the other stuff that's built into the focus, it's kind of mediocre, but this is something that kind of leans into the other stuff that the Analyst is a little bit better at, which is kind of working together as a team. More likely than not, when you're going to be using Opportunist, it's going to be because another ally has stunned. And knowing that you have Opportunist, your allies are going to understand that, you know, if they want to take out someone faster, they can stun a target. You can come in and with a combination of target vulnerability and possibly exploit trust, depending on everything that's going on, you can reduce the hit points of the target faster while still extending the stun effect. So, yeah, like I said, not the most amazing ability, but still a lot of different ways to use it. So, moving on. Finally, at 20th level, you get Precision. 20th level, when you succeed with a at 20th level, you succeed with a high degree of success on attacks if your result exceeds your target's defense by 10 or more, instead of when your result doubles the target's defense. So this is something that not a lot of people are familiar with as far as the Essence20 system. I know I wasn't aware of it until I was doing my research for this particular thing. But that's the idea of degrees of success. Degrees of success are not a foreign thing for making an attack. There we go. Degrees of success are not a foreign thing for anyone that's done any sort of dice pool based tabletop RPG. Where the more successes you get, you'll start getting even better things. Like a single success, hey, you did what you wanted to. 2 successes, you did what you wanted to and something better. 4 successes, you did what you wanted to and something better, and you get a pony. But in tabletop RPGs that are more D20 based, you generally don't have the idea of degrees of success too often because they can be exploited really, really easily. So the way that normally a degree of success goes is if you make an attack roll and your attack is double what is more than double the what the defense is, you apply the numerical effect, damage, lost action, etc., twice. And if you roll triple, you do it 3 times. And the interesting thing about degrees of success is degree of success is almost identical in effect to getting a critical success. However, they specifically state degrees of success are not critical successes. If you get a critical success and it also happens to give you a degree of success, both of those effects happen. So you could add the damage an additional time from your degree of success, and you could add the damage an additional time from your critical success. So basically you would be doing triple damage from one particular roll. One thing that is not explicitly explained in here is, again, if you triple it, because there's a triple version of the degrees of success, you would do triple the damage. And this doesn't specifically mention if you do it by 20 or more, it counts as the triple. There's nothing in here that doesn't say that, but if we're going to go specifically as the rules is written, the only thing that this does is you get a single degree of success if your results exceed the target's defense by 10 or more, instead of when the result is doubled. Since it doesn't mention the results being tripled, just reading what the text says here, as long as there's no errata I'm not familiar with, you would still have to triple the defense to get that additional degree of success. But when you start looking at the things that the analyst can do, the things like informed accuracy. Every time you use analyze target, you can get an upshift on there, which gives you a chance of just rolling higher in general. And then things like pinpoint. When you use the aim action, instead of getting an upshift, you can choose to ignore one of the target's armor upgrades for each free action you spend aiming. That can be really, really clutch, because giving you more dice is nice, don't get me wrong, or being able to roll higher dice is nice, don't get me wrong. But being able to reduce their defense score by a particular amount can be devastating with precision, because again, precision, you just need to beat it by 10. That also means getting an automatic crit can actually be detrimental to precision. Again, remember on the dice ladder, when you're doing upshifts, you can upshift it up to a D12, and the D12 is the highest you can ever have in a particular skill. When you upshift from there, it goes from a D12 to 2D8 to 3D6, and then auto success, and then auto critical success. Both auto success and auto critical success don't involve rolling and don't give you a number. You can't get any degrees of success off of either of those. You just get your success. So for this particular character, it's actually in your best interest once you hit level 20 to never actually use the auto success or auto critical success, because rolling 3d6 and then adding a d20 to that is going to give you a significantly higher chance of rolling at least 10 above, in addition to the fact that as long as you're specialized, there's also a good chance you're going to be getting a critical hit out of that, which is really, really nice. And with you rolling all those things, you have 2d8 and 3d6 and a d12 and a d10, you are going to be rolling remarkably high somewhere in there. Unless you roll that like me, and then all the numbers will be ones. Yeah, being able to basically at will lower their armor score for you means that you can take advantage of precision a lot. And that's where damage starts getting really, really crazy. Because again, adding target vulnerability, adding exploit trust onto it, and then maybe even adding in equipment that you've upgraded to do additional damage and the things like that, means that Spec Ops, specifically as a sniper style character, can do some unbelievably high amounts of damage while still taking taking advantage of all of the analyst options that you have. Getting your Spec Ops to the Transformer into a place where they are going to be the one that initiates combat. You can have them up there with their one-handed weapon, because again, they can't use two, so you get them close enough that they can get a good shot off. So they're going to be the one that starts combat. They use Analyze Target a few times before you're in initiative, just so that they get all the bonuses that they need to get up to the 3d6. And they also know what kind of armor it is. They use Pinpoint to get rid of a bunch of things of armor, combination of target vulnerability and exploit to trust to get extra damage, and then precision to just get that last bit of things. You can probably one-shot a lot of enemies to start combat off. So yeah, as much as, again, the Spec Ops is not going to be able to compete damage-wise with like the Gunner or the Warrior, who are much more focused on dealing a lot of damage. But given the right preparation, and especially with things like you get upshifts on infiltration skill tests. So getting to a spot where you have a clear shot and everything without them knowing that you're there, you're already better at that than most. You want to have a high speed score so that you have enough free actions to do all the different things that you use for free actions for. You're going to be able to get this particular character into a really good spot, hopefully using a lot of your other analyst abilities, especially your the fact that your alertness skill is probably really high because you use it for so many different things. You're going to be able to see ambushes before they happen. You're going to be able to scout ahead and things like that to be able to find where the enemies are, and then you get everyone into position. You are the one that's going to start combat off, and you're generally going to start combat off by either taking one of the enemies out or severely damaging them so the rest of your allies can finish them off. Lots of really cool things there. So, moving on to final thoughts. Overall, Spec Ops is really interesting because, again, the Analyst is designed to be a support character, and they do it exceptionally well. But the Spec Ops kind of pivots that support from, I'm going to make it so all of my friends do awesome stuff, to, I'm going to make sure that the people that are going to hurt my friends are not going to be able to hurt them. It is a very offense-focused support class, and it doesn't rely anywhere near as much on buffing your allies as the Manipulator does. That being said, it's still, with all the base analyst skills, it's still going to be a support style class. It's just also going to be able to hold its own in combat in a lot of different situations. The big thing with the Spec Ops character, the Spec Ops Analyst, is it has to try this one more time. It does need to set things up. Like, everything that they have here requires a little bit of prep work. Whisper Campaign, you need to know what target you're going to scapegoat using Whisper Campaign. Exploit Trust, you literally have to either surprise them or be the first attack before combat even starts. Opportunist, you need to be attacking an enemy that already has been stunned. So either you have to stun them the turn before, or an ally has to know that you can do this and stun them first. And then Precision, you need to make sure that you're making your attack rolls, that you're not using auto successes or auto critical successes in order to be able to get your degrees of success on there, to be able to do, again, significant amounts of damage, especially if you can combine degree of success with a critical hit. then you are effectively doing triple damage. Yeah. Overall, Spec Ops, again, really, really interesting character, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Can you see yourselves building a Spec Ops analyst and kind of having your little secret agent going forward? Do you prefer the manipulator, or is there another focus that you've seen in other books that you're just like, no. If you're going to go analyst, you got to go this one. Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, we'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.